original Gran Turismo released in 1997, and according to GT Fandom, it had 180 cars in total, including prize cars and arcade-only models as well. When the sequel Gran Turismo 2 released in 1999, the roster had been dramatically enlarged to around 620 vehicles, according to GT Fandom again, while other sources state that it holds more like 650 cars. Either way, that's an absolute ton. However, that number was dramatically reduced in Gran Turismo 3, which had just 180 vehicles, way closer to the amount we got on the original GT. So, what happened to all the models that were introduced in GT2? Well, most of them disappeared almost as soon as they arrived on our consoles. In this video, we'll go through all the vehicles that were introduced in Gran Turismo 2, and have never been seen again so far. I hope you enjoy the video. Before we get into the video, I want to welcome the first ever sponsor to my channel, Fishing Clash. Fishing Clash is a mobile fishing game developed by 10 Square Games, which is available on both iOS and Android. Experience realistic fishing action in various locations around the world, from serene lakes and enchanted rivers to exotic oceans and harsh seas. You can encounter and catch a wide array of fish species using different types of equipment and techniques, including common types of fish and much rarer ones if you're lucky. With Fishing Clash, you can also compete in featured tournaments and challenges, where you can face off against your friends or other anglers worldwide. Download Fishing Clash today. Just scan the QR code right here or check out the video description or the pinned comment to find my link. Best of luck with your catches. Now, on with the video. We start alphabetically with Acura. There were 4 Integras we never saw again. The Integra GSR, the Integra GSR 95, the Integra Type R 98, and the Integra Type R 95. The newer Acura Integra Type R 01 was favoured in Gran Turismo 3, while the game also retained the older Honda Integras, choosing to can the older Acura models instead of keeping both. Next we have Alfa Romeo, starting with the 145 2-litre Cloverleaf 98. Unlike the Integra, there isn't simply an updated version of this car on GT3, which is a shame, since this car is a small European hatchback, which certainly has its place. We'd have to wait until GT4 is released to see a similar Alfa, the 147. Then we have 2 155s, the 155 2.0 TS16V and the 155 Touring Car. The road version of this car would never return to GT, with Polyphony preferring to keep the 156 for Gran Turismo 3. The 155 Touring Car became the 155 2.5 V6 Ti 93, the actual touring car that raced in real life, rather than the unofficial car we had on GT2. There was also one of the 156s that was exclusive to GT2, the 156 2-litre TS16V98. GT scrapped this version of the car, preferring to keep the faster 156 2.5-litre V6 24V98 instead. There were also 2 166s that were introduced on GT2 and were never seen again. The 166 2.0 TS16V98 and the quicker 166 3.0 V6 24V98. Strangely, it was the 2.5-litre version of the car that was taken forward to Gran Turismo 4, while the faster 3-litre version was canned, as well as the slower 2-litre version. Lastly for Alfa Romeo, we have the GTV 2.0 TS16V98, the GTV 3.0 V6 24V98, and the Spider 2.0 TS98, which is essentially a soft-top version of the GTV. No equivalent cars featured on GT3, while GT's creators ultimately replaced these 1998 versions with the updated 2001 versions of the cars when GT4 was released. quick stop at Aston Martin before we move on to Audi. The DB6 was the only Aston to never reappear after GT2. We'd actually have to wait until Gran Turismo 7 before a similar car appeared in the series again. But instead of the DB6, it was the older and perhaps more notable DB5 that appeared. Audi now, first the A3 96. While GT3 didn't feature an A4, Gran Turismo 4 featured the updated 2003 version of the car. Another car to never return was the Audi A4 2.8 Quattro. With the reduced car list on GT3, GT's creators decided to keep the S4 and sack the A4. Then there was the S3 99. This car was only replaced in Gran Turismo 4 with the newer S3 from 2002. Lastly, there was the TT LM Edition, a car that did not exist in real life. While this car was never seen in any other GT games, we did get the apt Audi TT-R02, which was introduced in GT Concept, and is a spiritual successor of sorts. On to BMW, there were 4 different 3 Series models that were introduced in Gran Turismo 2, and they were absent from the series after that. The 320 Ci, the 323 Ci, the 323 Ti Compact, and the BMW 328i. 3 of those are from the E46 generation, and the E46 lineup was condensed in GT3, leaving just the 328 Ci that was carried over from GT2, while the rest were binned. The 323 Ti Compact is from the E36 generation, and I believe we're still waiting for any E36 3 Series to appear on GT7 and beyond. To this date, this is the only car from that generation to appear on a GT game. On GT2, we also had the BMW 528i, the 740i, and the 840 Ci. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've actually had a standard 5 Series BMW in any other GT game to date. Just the M5 starting with Gran Turismo 5. The 740i and 840 Ci would never appear again either. In general, it seems as though GT's creators have a preference for performance models like the M3. Although I am surprised that we haven't seen the new 8 Series yet on GT7. Moving on to Chevrolet, where we have a Camaro at first. The Camaro SS97. This car was simply updated to the 2000 version of the car on Gran Turismo 3, with the creators canning the older 96 and 97 models. 3 Corvettes were also introduced on GT2 and cut almost as quickly. Corvette 427 Stingray C369, the Corvette Stingray C382, and the Corvette ZR1 C495. Beginning with Gran Turismo 4, the 427 Stingray C3 was replaced with the Stingray L46 350 C3 69, its small block counterpart. Strangely, this could be seen as a downgrade, with the Gran Turismo 2 version of the car producing around 80 more horsepower than its replacement. The Stingray 82 was another Corvette which would never again see the light of day on Gran Turismo, with the creators seemingly having a preference for both the older and newer models, with this time period of the Corvette's history being ignored. With the ZR1, the Corvette Grand Sport is the only Corvette from this era to appear on GT3. However, the ZR1 name would return to Gran Turismo on GT4, but this would not be the 1995 version, but the 1990 version that debuted. And now we come to one of the GT community's favourite cars. It's the Chrysler Phaeton. Yes, this vehicle is one of the few to achieve meme status among GT fans, and it now also has a spot in this video, as it appeared on Gran Turismo 2 and pretty much nowhere else. And I mean in general. This car appeared in one other game, which was Top Drives in 2017, and that's it. Back in GT land, we can only guess at why it was scrapped after Gran Turismo 2. Perhaps because it was fairly useless in the game, and newer concept cars began to take priority. 4 Citroens to discuss now, 2 Saxos at first. The Saxo 1.6i VTS and the Saxo Rally Car. There was no standard Citroen cars on the sequel, just the Zara Rally Car 99. But on GT4 we did get the newer Citroen C3, which never really hit the same as the Saxo in my opinion. Then there's the rally car, available in arcade mode as a standalone car, and a racing modification in GT mode. This was called in favour of just keeping the Zara Rally Car 99 instead. Speaking of the Zara 1.8i 16V exclusive would not return at all, and was eventually replaced by the 2003 version on Gran Turismo 4. Also the Zara Rally Car, which was a fictional model on Gran Turismo 2, replaced by the actual Zara Rally Car on Gran Turismo 3 and beyond. Onto Daihatsu. There were 3 mirrors, also known as the Quor, that debuted on GT2 but went no further. The Mirror TRXX90, the Mirror TR 4-wheel drive 98, and the Mirror TX 4-wheel drive 98. On Gran Turismo 3 these were condensed and replaced by the Mirror TRXX Avanzato R97, a faster spec than those on GT2. There were also 2 Daihatsu Moves that didn't reappear, the Move SR XX 4-wheel drive 98 and the Move Custom Aero Down 98. There was no Move on GT3, but GT4 did resurrect 3 other Daihatsu Moves that also appeared on GT2. So maybe 5 in total would have been excessive. There were also 3 Optis that appeared only on GT2. The Opti Aero Down Beats 4-wheel drive 98, the Opti Club Sport 2-wheel drive 97 and the Opti Club Sport 4-wheel drive 97. As far as I'm aware, no Optis would appear on any GT game again in the future, and it's hard to guess why this might be. Maybe it's because there's no great difference, in my opinion, between these and other smaller Daihatsu models. However, I have to be honest and say that I quite like the styling of the Opti over some of the other cars in the range. And we also have 3 Storias, also known as the Syrian. The Storia X498, the Storia Rally Car and the Storia X4 Rally Car. Starting with the X498, this was simply updated to the new version from the year 2000 in Gran Turismo 3. However, the rally cars would never be featured in a GT game again. Although made up, they did at least take inspiration from real-life Storia rally cars. So in theory, it would have been possible to license the real thing. Lastly, we have the Terios Kid Aero Down 98. This car simply never appeared again, not in any shape or form. And it's still in production today, although now it's more of an SUV. But still, there were definitely newer models in the same vein as the 1998 version on Gran Turismo 2 that they could have included. Okay, on to Dodge, starting with the Avenger ES, Intrepid ES and Stratus ES. These simply didn't return. It seems as though GT's creators favoured the performance cars like the Vipers more than anything, which isn't surprising. And also the historic muscle cars, also not surprising really. So there was no desire to keep these sedans. But having said that, there were 2 muscle cars which did not reappear after GT2. The Challenger 72 and the Charger 71. The Challenger was replaced by the earlier 1970 model on Gran Turismo 5, while the Charger was replaced by the Charger Super B 426 Hemi 71, a more well-known model. 2 Neons also did not make the cut, the Neon ACR and the Neon RT. The Dodge SRT4 is the spiritual successor to these cars really, but I'm still a bit gutted that the Neon RT never returned. And then you have 2 cars that you might be a bit surprised about. The Dodge STP Taisan Viper GT from 99, and the Dodge Viper GTS RT Oreca, also from 1999. Although the Taisan Viper is a good car on the game, sadly it didn't see much success in real life, which is perhaps why it never returned. The Oreca Viper was replaced by the newer 2000 version of the car. However, I would have really loved GT's creators to have kept in both of these. The livery of the 1999 version is every bit as good as the red and white one in my opinion. Fiat is up next, starting with the Cinquecento Sporting and the Seicento Sporting, otherwise known as the Fiat 500 and 600. Neither of these returned, possibly because GT creators' focus on Fiat cars shifted towards modern performance vehicles and older classic cars, and away from these 1990s little hatches. And then there's the Fiat 500R75. Funnily enough, there are 3 old 500s on Gran Turismo 4, but none of them are the 1975 version. There's the 500F from 1965, the 500L from 1969, and the 500R from 1972. Then there are the more modern performance cars, the Barchetta, the Coupe 2.0 20V Turbo, and the Punto GT. The Barchetta was updated to the 2000 version on Gran Turismo 4, as it was absent from GT3. The Coupe was much the same, this too was updated to the newer 2000 version. The Punto on GT4 was not only the newer 2000 version, but also the faster Abarth variants as well. Okay, Ford is up next. I've grouped together the Kuga and the Puma first. Neither of these cars would ever return again, and while the Kuga would cease production in 2002, the Puma is still made today, so there's no excuse. And then there's the Mondeo Gear X 2.5 i24V. No Mondeo would ever feature on GT again, which is strange, given that the ST version would have been a good fit for the roster of cars in my opinion. We also have the Ford Ka 99, which was replaced by the newer 2001 version on Gran Turismo 4. Two Focuses next, the Focus 1.8i Zetec and the Focus Gear 2.0i Zetec. These were eventually replaced by 2 performance models in GT4, the RS from 2002 and the ST170 from 2003. 4 Mustangs met the same fate as well. The GT98, the SVT Cobra 98, the GT99 and the SVT Cobra 99. While the 1998 version never returned to GT, the 1999 SVT Cobra was updated to the 2000 SVT Cobra R on Gran Turismo 3. The RS200 Rally Car 86 kind of returned, but not exactly. It was replaced by the 1984 version of the car on Gran Turismo 4, and the actual real-life rally car from 1985. The Taurus 99 was another Ford that never returned to this series. Strangely, it was replaced by the older 1998 version on Gran Turismo 4. Lastly, we have the GT90, a famous concept car from the 1990s. Hard to believe that this one never returned, but to be honest, it was a bit of a handful on Gran Turismo 2. So in my opinion, it may have needed a bit of an overhaul in the handling department if it was to return. There were also 2 HKS cars, the 180SX and the Skyline, both likely added into GT2 for the cut drag race mode that never was. Even with drag racing coming to the series in Gran Turismo 4, sadly the HKS cars did not reappear. We move into Honda territory now, and we begin with 3 Accords. The Accord SIRT 97, the Accord SIRT 98 and the Accord Type R. They were condensed and replaced by the Accord Euro R from 2000 in Gran Turismo 3. However, I would have personally liked to see the Type R return, to sit alongside the Civic and Integra. Then there's the Honda Accord Wagon 2300 VTL 4-wheel drive 97. And the Honda Accord Wagon SIR 98. These 2 Accord wagons that debuted on GT2 were never seen again. To my knowledge, GT creators seem to have strayed away from the wagon series and focused on the sedans instead. 2 Civics met a similar fate, the Civic SIR EK 98 and the Civic Vario SI EK 98. Only 1 EK Civic crossed over from GT2 to GT3, and that was the Type R model, while these more standard Civics were put in the bin. The Honda Integra SIR-G DC298 was binned off as well after GT2. Similarly, the Type R was carried over into GT3, while this slower model was left behind. The Honda Life T97 and 98 both got the chop as well. In Gran Turismo 4, however, they introduced the classic version of the Honda Life from 1972. So the Life name carried on in Gran Turismo, just without these later 90s models. There was also the Honda logo. Not the quickest or most memorable Honda, which is perhaps why it was cut from future games. It was only in production for about 5 years anyway. A point in its favour though, it's touted as being something of a rare car these days. The Prelude SIR 98 was also cut. Instead, the quicker SIR S spec was taken forward from GT2 into GT3. Then there was the Z Turbo, a curious little car that never returned to the series. However, we did get the Honda Z ACT 70 in Gran Turismo 4, so maybe this is a successor of sorts. Okay, getting to the most interesting ones now, starting with the S2000 GT1. This was a car made by the creators of GT. On Gran Turismo 3, it was replaced by another original creation, the S2000 LM race car. Now we have 3 JGTC cars: the Mobile 1 NSX, the Raybrig NSX, and the Takata NSX. The Mobile 1 NSX would return on GT4, but it would be the car from the 2001 season that was featured. It was the same story with the Raybrig NSX too. It was updated to the 2000 version and was featured in the sequel, Gran Turismo 3. With the Takata NSX, we would receive the 2003 version of the car on Gran Turismo 4, with the 1999 variant remaining on GT2 and GT2 only. Lastly, there are also 2 Mugen NSXs from JGTC that were introduced on Gran Turismo 2. The 1998 version and the 1999 version, although both look incredibly similar. These were condensed and replaced by the updated 2000 version of the car on Gran Turismo 3. Moving on to Jaguar, where we have the XJ Sport 3.2 and the XJR vehicle. Neither of these cars would ever return to Gran Turismo, with the creators seemingly preferring to focus on the performance models in the range, as well as the classics like the E-Type. There was also the Jaguar XK8 on GT2, while GT3 only features the more powerful XKR. So therefore they just decided to take the XKR forward from GT2 rather than both vehicles. Lastly, there's the XJR15 race car. I honestly don't know why we've never seen this car since. Of course we would get the XJR9 race car on Gran Turismo 4, but I'm sure there would have been room for both. Lancia is up next. There were 3 Deltas that never appeared in the series again. The Delta HF Integrale, the Delta HF Integrale Collezione, and the Delta HF Integrale Rally Car. The road-going Delta did reappear on GT4, but it was the Delta HF Integrale Evoluzione 91 that was carried over from GT2, while these other models were sadly left behind. The rally car, meanwhile, was turned into the official Delta HF Integrale Rally Car 92, while this unofficial version stayed on Gran Turismo 2. There was also the Lancia Ypsilon 1.2 16V, one of the more modern cars from Lancia at the time, from a period in this car maker's history that was certainly not as notable as the old rallying days. Maybe it's a case of the less said the better about Lancia cars from this era. Okay, Lexus now, which was present on GT2 as a part of the Toyota dealership. The GS397, the GS400, the SC396 and the SC400. These were all missing after GT2. Gran Turismo 4 featured the SC397, which was a new car to the series at the time, rather than bringing back any of these models from GT2. Of course, we still had the Toyota Sora too, which is very similar. This is another interesting one in my opinion, the Lister Storm V12 94. It's surprising to me that this car has never returned in its road-going format. Instead, it would only be the race version of the car that would reappear in GT3 and beyond. I think it would have been nice to have both. Okay, Lotus now, starting with 3 Elans. The Elan S264, the Elan S4 Sprint 71, and the Elan S2 90. The Elan S2 and S4 were replaced by the older Elan S1 62 on Gran Turismo 4. while the Elan S2 from 1990 simply never reappeared on any later GT games. And I really can't say why. I still think this would be a good addition to the roster. There were also two Elises that only existed on GT2. The Elise 111S and the Elise 135. And to be fair, there were 6 different Lotus Elise models on GT2, including the Elise GT1 and the Motorsport Elise, which I think is a bit overkill. These two were culled, while the likes of the Elise Sport 190 was taken forward to the sequels. Speaking of the Elise GT1, neither this nor the Esprit GT1 would appear on any later Gran Turismo games. Both cars weren't particularly successful in real life, which is perhaps why they didn't return. And while they look good, they were notoriously difficult to drive on GT2. Okay, now we turn our attention to Mazda. The Demio GLX Special 98 was exclusive to GT2. This was replaced by the 1999 Demio instead. And then we have 4 Familias. The Familia Interplay 89, the Familia GTR 92, the Familia GTX 92 and the Familia S-Wagon 99. These were also called the 323 in some regions and the Protégé in others. The older models simply never returned to the series, although the 323F from 1993 was retained. The Familia S-Wagon 99 was another car that never returned, and also didn't have a similar car added to later games as a replacement. There's also the Familia Rally Car 2, another one of the arcade exclusive cars that existed as a racing modification on GT mode. As far as I know, the creators of GT strayed away from Mazda rally cars from GT3 onwards, and focused on the likes of Le Mans cars and touring cars instead. And then there's the Mazda Autozam AZ1 A-Spec 91. This was one of 2 AZ1s on GT2, with the other being the standard model, and it was the standard model that was taken forward to GT3, not the A-Spec version. There were also 2 MX-5s that only appeared on GT2. The Roadster 1.6 S-Package NB98 and the Mazda Roadster 1.8 VS NB98. These two were left behind in favour of the RS version of the car, which was taken forward from GT2 onto the sequels. And then there were the tuned Roadsters as well, the A-Spec, B-Spec and C-Spec. Sadly, none of these 3 cars would ever reappear. In fact, a lot of the tuned cars that were offered as prize cars on GT2 would not re-emerge. You might not believe this, but there were 10 Mazda RX-7s that were all introduced on Gran Turismo 2, and they never appeared on any subsequent games. Let's start with the RX-7 Cabriolet 90 and the RX-7 GT Turbo 83. The Cabriolet seems to have been called in favour of keeping the hardtop versions of the FC RX-7s, while the GT Turbo is a bit more of a mystery. I think it's a shame that we didn't see this one again, as we never got a similar replacement. The closest thing we got was a 1985 FC model on Gran Turismo 4, but of course this isn't from the same generation of RX-7s. 4 more RX-7s now. The RX-7 Type R FD98, the RX-7 Type RB FD97, the RX-7 Type RB FD98, and the RX-7 Type RS FD97. On Gran Turismo 3, the number of RX-7s in the game has really been condensed. Instead of all these models, we simply get the RX-7 Type RS98, which was carried over from GT2 in favour of all of these. The RX-7 Type RZ97 was another car to not make the cut for the sequel. It was updated to the 2000 version of the RZ instead. Then we have the RX-7 GTC 99 and the RX-7 GTC LM Edition 99. The road-going GTC was potentially not taken forward because it was a concept car. with GT's creators preferring to include newer concept cars instead, like those seen in Gran Turismo Concept. The LM version may not have been taken forward to Gran Turismo 3 because it was an original creation, and from GT3 onwards there's a lot less of these, and more actual licensed race cars. Lastly, for Mazda, there's the RE Amamiya Matsukiyo RX-7 99. Another surprising omission from later games in the series, where the number of GT300 cars from JGTC was reduced. Although we did get the RX-7 LM Edition in Gran Turismo 3, which is perhaps something of a successor. Mercedes is next, starting with the AMG C43 and the AMG E55. Neither of these cars would ever return, and the closest thing we got was the E55 AMG from 2002, which appeared on Gran Turismo 4. There was also the CLK 200 Sports and the CLK 320 Sports. In Gran Turismo 3, these were replaced with the newest CLK 55 AMG from the year 2000. There were only 2 Mercury cars on Gran Turismo 2, and one of them never returned. As I mentioned before, the Cougar ceased production in the early noughties, and subsequently it was never brought back in Gran Turismo either. One MG to mention too, and it was the only MG on the game. The MGF 1.8i VVC 95. On Gran Turismo 4, this car was reincarnated as the 1997 version of the MGF. Now, something that really sucks is that 3 cars made by Japanese tuner Mines debuted in Gran Turismo 2 and were only ever on Gran Turismo 2. The Mines Lancia Evolution 5, the Mines R32.5 Skyline GTR, and the Mines R33 Skyline GTR. In the sequel, the Mines roster was cut down to just the Mines Lancia Evolution 6, the newer version of the Evo 5 from GT2, and the R34 Skyline. However, I would have loved to see the R32 and R33 Mines Skylines carried across in addition. There were also 2 minis that didn't make the cut for future games. The Mini 1.3 and the Rover Mini Cooper 1275S Mark I. With the Mini 1.3, this was simply cut in favour of the sportier Mini Cooper. However, I'm not sure why the rally version was never brought back. This was a good addition to GT2, and was also based on a real-life vehicle, so I would have loved to have seen it in future games. Mitsubishi now, and 4 GTOs. The 3000 GT LM Edition 99, the 3000 GT SL 99, the 3000 GT VR4 99, and the 3000 GT Twin Turbo MR 99. The LM Edition was sadly canned along with the Gran Turismo 1 version, which also appeared on Gran Turismo 2, potentially because the creators featured fewer original creations on GT3, and went for licensed race cars instead. Surprisingly, GT's creators seemingly favoured the 1998 GTO, or 3000 GT model for the sequel, with the 1999 models being scrapped. 3 Gallants met the same fate as well. The Galant Super VR 498, the Galant VR 499, and the Galant VR G99. While no Gallants exist on GT3, we did see 2 return on GT4. However, these were older models from 1970 and 1989. The 90s Gallants were staples of the first 2 Gran Turismo games, but sadly, they ceased to be a part of the series after this. 4 Lancers were never seen again either. The Lancer Evolution 3 Rally Car, the Lancer Evolution 4 Rally Car, the Lancer Evolution 5 Rally Car 98, and the Lancer Evolution 5 RS 98. The first 2 were arcade mode only vehicles, and while the Evo 3 Rally Car was dropped, the Evo 4 Rally Car became the real-life licensed car, rather than the unlicensed version we saw here on GT2. The Evo 598 Rally Car was dropped in favour of keeping the Evo 6 Rally Car instead. And the Evo 5 RS is an interesting one. They kept both the Evo 6 RS and the Evo 5 GSR, just not the Evo 5 RS. There were also 5 Legnums that were cut. It's hard to fit them all on one screen. The Mitsubishi Legnum ST97, the Legnum ST99, the Legnum Super VR4 98, the Legnum VR4 Type S97, and the Legnum VR4 Type S99. In fact, there were no Legnums on Gran Turismo 3 and only one on GT4. And it wasn't even one that was carried over from GT2. Instead, we got the Legnum VR4 Type V98, leaving the 5 from Gran Turismo 2 behind. 2 Minicas were also cut from future games. We had the Minica Dangan ZZ90 and the Minica PJ98. The 1990 car was actually replaced by the older 1989 version from Gran Turismo 4 onwards, while the Minica PJ never really had a like-for-like replacement as far as I know. There were 2 Mirage cars that also did not feature in the series again. The Mirage Asti RX R98 and the Mirage Asti ZR 97. Instead, the Mirage Cyborg ZR 97 was the model that was taken from Gran Turismo 2 and into the sequels. 2 Pajero Minis also did not exist in the series outside GT2. The Pajero Mini Sport 98 and the Pajero Mini VR2 97. Instead of keeping these road versions of the car, Gran Turismo would go on to introduce 2 Rally Pajeros instead. The Rally Raid Car 85 and the Evolution Rally Raid Car 03. Lastly for Mitsubishi, there is the Taven Trampio FTO. Another GT300 car that did not appear in later games in the series. In fact, it was the fictional LM race car that took on a new lease of life on Gran Turismo 3, with the real life car being cut, contrary to examples we've seen previously in this video. Mugen is up next, again not a standalone dealership on GT2 but a part of the Honda outfit. First we have the Accord SIRT and the Prelude Type S. The only Mugen car that was carried over to Gran Turismo 3 and 4 was the Mugen S2000, with all the others falling by the wayside, including the Accord and the Prelude. And it's the same story with the Mugen CRX Pro 2 and Pro 3. It simply seems like they wanted to have fewer tuned cars on the sequels, and prize cars like these would not be carried over. There is also the Mugen Beat 2. It was the Honda Beat 91 that was retained, while the modified Mugen version was dropped. The last 3 Mugen cars to never appear again were the Civic Ferio, the Civic Type R, and the Integra Type R. I've separated these from the rest because on Gran Turismo 3 and 4 we did at least get the Spoon Civic Type R and the Spoon Integra Type R, which were also featured on GT2. So maybe they felt like they just didn't need both the Mugen and Spoon versions. Okay, now we come to Nissan, which has potentially the largest number of cars that never came back. I'll try and get through them quickly. 3 Silvias first, the Silvia Case Aero SE98, the Silvia Spec R99 and the Silvia Spec S99. Instead of taking all these forward, Gran Turismo 3 takes the Silvia Spec R Aero and the Spec S Aero from Gran Turismo 2, leaving these 3 behind. There's also the 180SX Type X 95, which was also called the 240SX Fastback Type X 96 in America, and the 200SX Type X 96 in Europe. This was simply retired in favour of keeping the newer, facelifted versions of the car instead. 2 Fairlady Zs were cut as well. The Fairlady Z 300ZX version S 2-seater 98, and the Fairlady Z 300ZX version R2x2 98. Similarly, these 2 were binned while the Fairlady Z 300ZX version R Twin Turbo 2x2 98 was the one that reappeared in GT3. 3 Pulsars didn't make the cut either. The Pulsar VZR 97, the Pulsar VZR N1 97 and the Pulsar GTI-R Rally Car. As far as I know, the Pulsar never returned to Gran Turismo after GT2, so it simply seems like all the Pulsars were canned at this point, even the ones that had been carried over from Gran Turismo 1. There were also 2 cut Nissan March cars as well, which was also called the Micra in other regions like Europe. the March G-Sharp 97, and the March Super Turbo 89. While the older model was completely cut, the 97 model was replaced with the 1999 model on Gran Turismo 4. Next up are two Primeras, the Primera 2.0 TEV 98 and the Primera Wagon 98. While the Primera was absent from GT3, GT4 brought it back, but not the 1998 models. Instead, the 1990 model came back from GT1 and GT2, and the 2001 model was also introduced for the first time. Then there was the Sunny VZR 98. Another car that simply never returned, and I'm not sure why. Here are two cars which I think GT's creators should consider bringing back. The R390 GT1 97 and the R390 GT1 Road Car 97. Yes, the 1997 R390 GT1s never returned, with the series creators favouring the 1998 cars instead. I would have personally loved to see both the 97 and 98 models on future games, but sadly I'm still waiting for a reunion. Inevitably, it is Skyline time now. 4 Skylines would not return in future games. The Skyline GTR 4-door R33 97, the Skyline GTR 4-door tuned by Nismo, the Skyline 25 GT Turbo 98, and the Skyline 280 Type MR. The 4-door Skylines would never be seen again, with the creators preferring to solely have the standard 2-door variants. The 25 GT Turbo was likely dropped in favour of keeping the likes of the more recognisable GTR and GTR V-Spec models, while the 280MR may have been dropped because it's another tuned car, as it was actually built by P-Ride, with GT3 and GT4 seeing less of these types of cars. 4 Stegeas got the chop as well. The Stegea 25T RS4 V98, the Stegea 260 RS tuned by Nismo, the Stegea 260 RS Alltech version 97, and the Stegea RS4 V97. There were no Stegeas on GT3, but there were 2 on GT4. The only one that returned from GT2 was the Stegea 260 RS Alltech version 98, while these 4 were all binned. Then there were the JGTC cars that were only ever on GT2. The first lot are the Artes XL Skyline GTR GT, the Calsonic Skyline GTR GT99, the Cure R33 Skyline GT97, and the Unicia Jack Skyline GT99. The Artes XL Skyline simply disappeared, as did the Cure R33 and the Unicia Jax R33. The R33s are more understandable as they're based on the older Skyline rather than the newer R34, like the Pennzoil Nismo for example, which was retained. The Calsonic Skyline however was simply updated to the version of the car that featured in the 2000 version of JGTC. Then there was also the Zexel Skyline GT97, the 300ZX GT SGT 97, the Daishin Silvia GT99, and the Zanavi Arta Silvia GT 99. The Zexel Skyline was another R33 model, and the series creators seem to have wanted to focus on the newer R34 models instead. The 300ZX wasn't particularly successful in JGTC, which is why it might have been cut. And then we had the GT300 Silvias. Sadly, along with a lot of the other GT300 cars, they didn't make it into future games. In general, it seems as though they wanted to focus a lot more on GT500 than GT300. Over to Opel now. It's worth noting that the Opel and Vauxhall models are all the same, other than the Opel and Vauxhall branding. The vehicles that did not return are the Opel Astra SRI 2.0 i16V, the Opel Corsa Sport 1.6 i16V, the Opel Vectra GSI 2.5 V6, and the Opel Tigra Ice race car. While the normal Astra was binned, we did receive the touring car instead, so I guess we got an upgrade. The Corsa was simply updated to the Corsa Comfort 1.401 in Gran Turismo 4. Similarly, the Vectra was updated to the Vectra 3.2 V603 in GT4 as well. So the only outlier is the Tigra Ice race car really. It was a shame to lose this one, especially when you consider that we did get a couple of snowy and icy rally courses on GT4. Peugeot next, starting with the 106. Two 106 were cut from future games. The 106 1.6 Rally and the 106 1.6 S16. This was a case of a simple update, with the 2003 versions of both these models being available in Gran Turismo 4, although the 106 was missing from GT3. There were also two 306s that never returned, the 306 S16 and the 306 Rally car. The standard 306 was updated to the newer 307 in Gran Turismo 4, but was completely absent from GT3. The 306 Rally car is another one of those arcade-only models, but was still available as a racing modification on GT mode. It might have been cut in favour of keeping the 206 Rally car, which was more iconic. Lastly, there was the 406 sedan. It was the coupe version of the 406 which was carried over to future games, while GT's creators decided to leave the sedan version here on Gran Turismo 2. There were also 4 Plymouth cars that were never seen again. Let's start with the Acura 70, the Plymouth GTX 67, and the Plymouth Roadrunner 71. While there wasn't even a Plymouth dealership black on GT3, Gran Turismo 4 brought it back, except it was the Acura 440 6-pack 71 that appeared, rather than the 1970 version. The GTX simply never came back, as the creators seemingly favoured what are perhaps more notable cars, such as the Acura we just saw. And then there's the Roadrunner, although it was actually just named the Plymouth Muscle car on GT2 as they couldn't get the licensing to use the name Roadrunner, which is a story for another time. And maybe it was this licensing that put them off trying to include this car in future games. Lastly, there's the PT Spider, another concept car that was potentially dropped in favour of showcasing newer concept cars in general instead. Okay, Renault, starting with the Clio. The Clio 16V and the Clio Sport V6 24V98. The standard version was dropped but also kind of upgraded to the Renault Sport Clio 2.0 16V02 from GT Concept onwards. However, that is a Renault Sport model rather than a standard one. The Clio Sport version was upgraded from the 1998 concept vehicle here on GT2 to the production version of the car from the year 2000 on Gran Turismo 3 and beyond. Then there was the Espace F1. Hard to believe this vehicle never returned, but it didn't. With the series creators adding some funky cars these days on GT7, I think the Espace could be due a return. The Laguna V6 was another car that we didn't see again, with the creators focusing on the hatchbacks instead. There were also 2 Megans that never came back, the Megane 2.0 16V Coupe and the Renault Megane Rally car. It was the Megane 2.0 IDE Coupe 2000 which came along in Gran Turismo 4, as a successor to the older model on GT2. But it was the Renault Sport R5 Turbo Rally 85 that showed up, with the Megane seemingly banished forever. Roof is up next, starting with 3 BTRs. The BTR Type 1, the BTR Type 2 and the BTR 2. The only BTR that appeared on Gran Turismo 4 was the Roof BTR 86, which was a new inclusion to the series at that point, with no BTRs being present on GT3. Then we have the CTR2 Sport, the RCT and the Turbo R. Instead of the CTR2 Sport being taken forward, it was the CTR2 96 from Gran Turismo 2 that also showed up in Gran Turismo 4. However, there was no RCT or Turbo R to be seen again. One Saleen to mention, the SR widebody, which was actually a part of the Ford dealership on GT2. Saleen was absent on GT3 but reappeared on GT4, featuring the Saleen S7. However, the SR widebody has been missing ever since GT2, with the creators seemingly straying away from race cars to Saleen's supercar. Next we have Shelby, starting with the Shelby GT500, and also the GT500 KR, which was exclusive to the Japanese version of the game. While there was only one Shelby car on GT3, GT4 reintroduced more vehicles to the series, but sadly not the GT500. Instead we got the GT350R 65. Then we had the Shelby Series 1 Supercharged 98. On GT4 this was updated to the Series 1 Supercharged 03. Okay, on to another one of the bigger dealerships in the game, Subaru. Starting with the Forester STB 97. To my knowledge, we haven't had a single Forester featured on Gran Turismo since this one. And that feels criminal, seeing as they're still in production today. Then there's the Impreza Rally Car 96, another one of those arcade mode only cars. It was the 1999 Impreza Rally Car that was taken forward to future games, with the 96 version being left in the past. Then we have 5 normal Imprezas. The Impreza Sedan WRX 97, the Impreza Sedan WRX 98, the Impreza Coupe WRX Type R STI version 4 97, the Impreza Coupe WRX Type R STI version 5 98, and the Impreza Sedan WRX Type RA STI version 6 99. On Gran Turismo 3 the Impreza roster was really cut down, and they just featured the Impreza Sedan WRX STI version 699, and of course the Impreza 22B STI version 98, which were both taken forward from Gran Turismo 2, while these other 5 did not make the cut. There were also 4 Impreza wagons which solely remained on GT2. The Impreza Sport Wagon WRX 98, the Impreza Sport Wagon WRX 97, the Impreza Sport Wagon WRX STI version 498, and the Impreza Sport Wagon WRX STI version 598. The Impreza wagon roster on GT3 was even more reduced, with just the Impreza Sport Wagon WRX STI version 699 being carried over from GT2. These other 4 sadly did not return. Likewise, there were 2 legacy wagons which only appeared on Gran Turismo 2. The Legacy Touring Wagon GTB Limited 97 and the Legacy Touring Wagon GTB 98. Interestingly, it was the older Legacy Touring Wagon GTB 96 that was retained for Gran Turismo 3, with the newer versions being binned. Next is the Plio, specifically the Plio RM98 and the Plio RS98. Now in my opinion, it feels as though the series had fewer K cars after GT2, so the Plio could simply have been a casualty of that apparent decision. Now it's the turn of the Subaru 360 at 69. This was another case of a vehicle being swapped for an older model, with the 360 returning on Gran Turismo 4 in its 1958 form. There were also 2 Vivios that didn't reappear, the Vivio RXRA 97 and the Vivio RXR 97. Again, it just seemed like they were moving away from the smaller models in the Subaru range and instead focusing on the more famous models like the Impreza and the Legacy, which is somewhat unsurprising, I guess. Lastly, we have the Cusco Subaru Impreza GT 99, and for once this wasn't a GT300 car that was completely canned. Instead, it was updated to the Cusco Subaru Advan Impreza 03 on GT4. Now we move on to Suzuki. 2 Alto Works were cut, the Alto Works RSX 90 and the Alto Works RSZ 98. Instead, they kept the Alto Works Suzuki Sport Limited 97 from GT2. Then there's the Servo Mode SR490 and the Suzuki KS 98. Again, these were potentially both cut from future games because GT's creators seem to have wanted fewer K cars on their games. Maybe they just didn't conjure up exciting races. Then we have 3 Wagon Rs. The Wagon R Aero RS 97, the Wagon R Column FT 97, the Wagon R Turbo RTS 95. And while the Wagon R RR 98 was brought back for Gran Turismo 4, these other 3 GT2 models bit the dust. Lastly, for Suzuki, we have the iconic Cultus Pikes Peak version, the Escudo's older brother. It's honestly beyond me as to why this car has never been brought back from the dead. Maybe they thought that the Escudo alone was sufficient, but I think there's definitely space to bring back the Cultus for a family reunion. Now we go on to Tommy Kaira. Shockingly, only one vehicle from this dealership on GT2 reappeared on GT3, and that was the ZZS. All the rest did not make it. Let's start with the cars that begin with the letter M, because why not? The M13 Stage 2, the M30 GTS 87, and the M30 GTS R 91. Yep, they really got rid of all of these. Maybe they thought that the Mainz R34 Skyline was enough? In particular, I really liked the M30 87, and I would have very much liked to see this make another appearance. And it was the same story with the R as well. Specifically the Tommy Kaira R95 and the Tommy Kaira R99. Two more Skylines that bit the dust, never to be seen in the series again, to date. Lastly, there's the ZZ299 and the ZZ3. The ZZ2 was updated to the 2000 version of the car, which looked a lot different to how it started out. Again, there's definitely a story here for another time. Meanwhile, the ZZ3 never returned, meeting the same fate as other concept cars from GT2, such as the Ford GT90. Moving on to Tom's now, which was a part of the Toyota dealership. On Gran Turismo 2, we had the Tom's Angel T01, the Tom's Supra, the Tom's 220, and the Tom's T111. On Gran Turismo 3, 4, 5 and 6, and maybe even beyond that, there was only one Tom's car in the game, which was the X540 Chaser from the year 2000. They really cut down the Tom's roster for some reason, as in general it felt like there were fewer tuned cars from this era on future GT games. Now we have the last of the big manufacturers, in terms of the size of the car roster on GT2, Toyota. If you're still watching the video at this point, I really appreciate you. Let me know in the comments if you've made it this far. Following on from Tom's, we have the Altezza 280T, which was tuned by Tom's, and also the Altezza LM Edition. The Altezza in general did make it into GT3, but it was the Altezza AS298 that was brought over from GT2, leaving the quicker tuned version behind. With the Altezza LM Edition, this became the Altezza LM race car on GT3. Then we have the Aristo V397 and the Caldina GT T97. The Aristo was updated to the 2000 version of this car on Gran Turismo 4, while the Caldina was much the same, being updated to the 2002 version on GT4. Then we have the first of several Celicas. The Celica GT4 ST18591 and the Celica SS3 ST20297. Starting with the 1991 version, this was overshadowed by the GT4 RC version of the car, which was kept on ahead of the GT4. The SS3 Celica was likely scrapped in favour of keeping the faster GT4 version of the S205 car instead. Then we have three more modern Celicas, at least at the time. The Celica Elegant Sports version 99, the Celica Mechanical Sports version 99, and the XYR Concept Car 99. With these three, it was simply a case of condensing the amount of 1999 Celica cars they kept in the game. It was only the SS2 model that was brought forward to Gran Turismo 3, with these other versions being left out. 4 unofficial Celica rally cars were only present on GT2 as well. The Celica Rally Car ST165, the Celica Rally Car ST185, the Celica Rally Car ST205, and the Celica Rally Car ZZT231. Out of all of these, it was only the ST185 and ST205 which were upgraded into their official licensed versions on the sequels. Despite also being based on a real-life rally car, the ST165 never reappeared, while the ZZT231 was an original creation made by the Gran Turismo team, which is perhaps why it never reappeared. 2 more special models from Toyota in the game were the Corolla Rally Car 97 and the Toyota GT198. The Corolla Rally Car was dropped in favour of keeping the newer 1998 model instead. while the GT198 was also dropped in favour of keeping the newer 1999 model, which was recently added to Gran Turismo 7 at the time of recording this video. Of course, with the livery editor, it's possible to remake the 1998 livery. Okay, moving on, we have the MR2s. The MR Spider 96, the G Limited 98, the GTS 98, and the MRS Show version 97. Okay, the first three were dropped in favour of adding the 1997 version of the MR2 instead, choosing to lose both the older and newer models from around the same period of time. The MRS Show version was scrapped, while the production version of the car was kept on, the MR2 S Edition 99. Next we have 3 Starlets and a Prius for good measure. The Starlet 3-door Turbo S82, the Starlet 3-door Turbo S87, the Starlet Glanza V98, and the Prius 97. Gran Turismo 4 brought the Starlet back to the series, but it was the Starlet Glanza V97 that was featured rather than the 80s models, and also in favour of the newer 1998 car. The Prius also reappeared in GT4, but it was the newer 2002 model that featured on the game, rather than the outdated 1997 one. Okay, now we have the GT500 cars. The CDMA1 Sarumo Supra GT 99, the Castrol Tom Supra GT 99, and the Denso Sard Supra GT 99. The Sarumo Supra never came back in that form, but Gran Turismo Concept did give us the Sarumo Supra from 2001 that looked quite a lot different. And both the Castrol Toms and Denso Supras were simply upgraded to the versions of the cars that featured in the 2000 season of JGTC on Gran Turismo 3. And so the cut of Gran Turismo 2's GT300 cars from future games seemingly continues, with the removals of the WED Sports Celica GT99, the BP Apex Craft Trueno GT99, and the Momo Corse Apex MR2 GT99. Fortunately, we did receive the updated WED Sports Celica 03 in Gran Turismo 4, and Gran Turismo 3 gave us the Super Autobax Apex MRS from 2000, which is a successor of sorts for the Momo MR2. However, we never saw the BP Apex Craft Trueno GT again. Streets will never forget this one. There were 2 TRD cars that never came back either. The TRD Chaser Sports X30 and the TRD 2000 GT. In fact, there was only one TRD car on GT3 and 4, the Celica TRD Sports M. Onto TVR, where a large percentage of its cars on Gran Turismo 2 were never seen again. We start with the Cerbera and Chimera. The Cerbera 4.5, the Chimera 4.0, the Chimera 4.5, and the Chimera 5.0. The Cerbera was absent from GT3 but came back on GT4. However, the version that was carried over was the Cerbera Speed 6 97, which was also present on Gran Turismo 2. The Chimera never reappeared, so I guess they thought that the Cerbera was sufficient. Then we had the Speed 12 and the Tuscan Speed 6. The Speed 12 was updated from the concept car seen in GT2 to the actual Cerbera Speed 12 from 2000. And it was much the same with the Tuscan, updated from the concept car to the actual version that was put into production. 3 Vector vehicles now, the Vector M12, the M12 LM Edition, and the Vector W8. This one is easy to explain, as the entire Vector dealership was never brought back to Gran Turismo. Perhaps it's because Vector went out of business in 1999, around the same time that GT2 was actually released. They did briefly reappear in 2006, however. Venturi was another dealership that never came back. Its cars on GT2 were the Atlantique 300, the Atlantique 400 GT, and the Atlantique 600 LM. Although these days they don't really seem to be making cars anymore. Although they did race for a couple of seasons in Formula E a few years ago, which aligns with their mission to focus on electric engines these days. And last of all, we have Volkswagen. Starting with the Golf 4 2.3 VS, the Golf 4 GTI, the Golf 4 GTI 1.8T and the Golf 4 V6. While no Golfs would appear on Gran Turismo 3, GT4 brought them back. It wouldn't be any of these models that would return though, with the Golf 4 GTI from 2001 making its first appearance in the series instead. There was also the Golf Rally car, another arcade standalone model and GT mode racing modification. Instead of keeping a rally special model, the focus was put firmly on the cup cars, notably the Lupo and the Beetle, the Lupo 1.4 99, and the Volkswagen New Beetle GLS 2.0 were two cars that also never came back to the series. The Lupo was updated to the 2002 version of the car in Gran Turismo 4, and the New Beetle was updated to the 2000 spec car in Gran Turismo. And last of all, we have the New Beetle GT, an original creation by the GT team, although it was inspired by the concept car from the Beetle Cup in 1999. This was replaced by the actual Beetle Cup car from 2000 on GT3. And there we have it, guys. As I say, I really do appreciate it if you stuck around for the entirety of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again for more content soon.